Okay, today we're going to be chatting about the Topo Athletic Cyclone 3, which is a lightweight, flexible, nimble speed trainer, which I've been using for the past 2 months now. I've had a pretty good time. I want to chat about my experience running through it top to bottom, chatting about the price point, a few comparisons, letting you know where this sits on the current market. We'll start off with a few specs, starting off with the stack height. We've got 28mm stack in the heel with a 5mm drop down to 23 in the forefoot, which by today's standards is quite minimal, quite low. Most shoes these days reaching over 40 to 44mm of stack in the heel. So to have, 28 is definitely more on the kind of lean side of things. In terms of the midsole compound, we have a branded Pebax Peba foam here, which is a beaded compound, quite a resilient, punchy foam, definitely not as compressive as the fully formed foam midsoles that you start to get these days, but still an energetic, lightweight foam nonetheless. With a full Pebax midsole, without a plate, without a shank, we're coming in at a very low weight of 205 grams for my men's size 10.5, which means that we're coming in at 10 to 15 grams lighter than the kind of average super shoe in my size, which I would say is sitting at around 220 to 225 grams most of the time, although that is trending a little bit lower. Starting off with the upper of this shoe, we have a lightweight, breathable, flexible mesh, which reminds me a lot of the New Balance Fuel Cell Rebel V2 and the 3, and actually the 4, I guess. Very similar materials here. We have a comfy heel counter with plenty of memory foam padding wrapping all the way around the back of the shoe into the ankle collar, and we've got a nice little bit here in the tongue as well. The lockdown through the heel and across the tongue is decent. I did find that the kind of silkiness of the material here did mean that my sock slipped against it just a little bit, so took a little bit of attention to get the kind of dialed fit that I was chasing. But once you actually learn how to lace it up and you can kind of focus on a nice midfoot lockdown, I found the fit to be quite secure. You do have to lock it down securely. You do have to pay attention to that because we do have this anatomical fit up in the forefoot. So you do have that extra bit of room, which if you don't pay attention to, you might find yourself sliding around a little bit with that extra bit of space. For myself, I really enjoyed the anatomical fit. It's quite nice to have a more kind of snappy, nimble shoe, which isn't completely squeezing in your toes. So I did enjoy that extra bit of room, although I'm not someone who necessarily needs it. So there's going to be people who really appreciate the fit here with that extra room on the pinky and just a squared off fit in general. Narrow footers might find this a bit too roomy, but for most people, it's just going to be pleasant, for some necessary. So it's nice to see that we have options like this on the current marketplace. With that wider fit, this is going to appeal to a fair few people, I'm sure. In terms of the sizing, I would go true to size in terms of length. So for myself, 10.5, which crosses over to Nike, Asics, Saucony, Hoka, is going to be working out quite well with a reasonable amount of room ahead of the toes, about a thumbnail. You do get the sensation that you might have gone a little bit too big because of the space that you might have ahead of your pinky, but in terms of length, true to size is the way to go. I would suggest though that this is probably not a wide foot friendly shoe overall, like in terms of the forefoot, it's definitely got the extra space if you have a squared off set of toes or you have a wider forefoot. But if you have a wide midfoot or a high volume foot, there's no promises here that this is going to be a guaranteed fit because it does fit, quite normally through the midfoot and heel. Moving down to the midsole, this is where the excitement is. We have a full Pebax compound here, no plates, no shanks, very slightly rocket geometry, if you can call it that, with the flexibility of the forefoot. It doesn't really come together that way. The ride here is snappy, it's nimble, it's fast, but it definitely does require you to put in a bit of extra work to make the shoe come together nicely. I really like the response that we get from the Pebax. I think having the beaded foam here is a really nice choice from Topo. I think this foam is a bit more resilient and holds up to the compression a lot better than I would expect from a fully foamed compound. So a bit more resilient, does a good job of protecting you from the road and giving you a nice spring back, especially once you start to get up onto the forefoot. The 5mm drop I think is advantageous here, meaning that you do have a little bit more guts up under the midfoot and forefoot relative to the heel. So if this was an 8 or 10mm drop shoe, I think you would probably bottom the forefoot out just that little bit easier. But 5mm here, I think is the kind of right balance between the two. It's not super harsh on the calves, definitely works them a little bit more, but it doesn't feel like it bottoms out either. For myself, I most enjoyed this shoe doing grass reps around an oval. Found it to be really quick to pick up the pace and accelerate. I really enjoyed that feature about it, but I did also find it could be used for warm-ups and cooldowns as well without it feeling too harsh or uncomfortable. It's definitely not my first choice as a jogging shoe. I'd probably lean to the Topo Spectre 2, which has the same foam, just a little bit more of it. It's kind of a beefed up cousin of it. I think that would probably be a better pick, but being able to scrape through 2Ks of jogging and not feel terrible, I think is a big tick in my box as a kind of competent trainer, which you can chuck on at the start of your session and pull off at the end. Who is this shoe going to work best for? I think it's going to suit people who are looking for a little bit of a different stimulus in their training rotation. Maybe they're using super shoes a bit too much, or they feel like all of their shoes are high stacked and rocketed and carbon plated and everything else like that, and they want something which is different, going to work some different muscles, going to offer a different sensation, but still have a bit of fun about it. Like, it's nice to have a Superfoamed here. I think this shoe is perfect in that situation. The Topo Cyclone 3 to me is the perfect rotation builder, a shoe which you can mix in to give yourself that different stimulus, work some different muscles, and kind of vary the load that you're going to be putting on your body. I think a few people might find this shoe to be a little bit harsh, to be honest, mainly because of the lack of rock ring or the stiffness as well. No carbon plate there to kind of carry you through the rest of your stride. It will feel a bit weird getting up into the forefoot and still having to do work through the ankle joint, through the calf to get the shoe to transition through. But if you can kind of commit to the process, give it a bit of time, get a few sessions into it, I found the adaptation process to be quite quick. And if you can take it onto some grass as well, just to ease in, I found the experience overall to be quite rewarding and had a good time in the Cyclone. So for me, this is a really nice mix-up, a nice change-up in the current marketplace. This might not be your cup of tea, but like it or not, I think this is the kind of shoe that we need out there right now to keep a bit of variation on the market, I suppose. Great shoe, snappy, nimble, requires a bit more work, but I think is rewarding for that. Really fun, fast ride with that added toe box room. I think it is occupying a nice little niche. I'm pretty happy with what Topo have done here. Down to the outsole, we've got two patches of rubber, one on the heel, one on the forefoot. The rubber itself has been holding up really nicely so far, and I think the grip has been decent too. Maybe not the stickiest on the wet, but reasonably dry footpaths, some textured road and a little bit of gravel. It's been doing okay. It has got a bit of exposed foam here, which is showing a bit of scuffing early on, but I'm unsure of whether that is actually going to wear down quicker or whether it's just the fact that it is a beaded foam and it's just carrying a little bit of extra dirt which is picked up on the first couple of runs. I have done a few grass reps on this shoe, so it's not really an accurate representation of 60 Ks of wear now in this shoe. I will double check before I post this. It's not an accurate representation because the grass obviously isn't going to be scuffing up the sole, but I think it's going to be decent enough. I would probably bet on the Superfoamed dying out before you wear through the rubber. That's my bet anyway. Coming around to the price point here in Australia, we're coming in for $260, which I think is okay. I think there's a couple of different ways that I look at this price point for myself. On one hand, we are getting a full Superfoam midsole. It is very light. It does have a decent level of versatility, and so I think it deserves that kind of price point sitting around other speed trainers like the DV8 Nitro 3 and the Boston and a few of those other speed trainers as well. But on the other hand, it is also a little bit lower stacked. So some part of me, some internal part of me says that maybe it should be a little bit cheaper just because there's not as much midsole foam about it. Does that really make sense? I'm not really sure. It should just be about what the shoe can do, the experience that it's offering. I think $260 is pretty decent, but there will be people who argue that, you know, shoes like the Rebel, the Propio from Puma could be doing a similar job for a little bit less, but at the end of the day, it's a full PEBA midsole. It's snappy, it's light, it's fast. It's doing its job really nicely, and it is a little bit niche with the wider toe box. So I think $260 is decent. I'm not going to have a big complaint there. Getting to a couple of comparisons, I am on the farm, so I don't have any of those shoes with me, which I would usually compare it to, but we'll run through a few off the top of the head. First is the Spectre 2, which is the big brother to this one, with a little bit of extra foam. I think we're looking at 36 or 38 in the heel, so bit of a beefed up P-bar midsole, P-backs that is, and I think there is a pretty different attitude between the two. The Spectre 2 to me feels like a Super Blast style kind of shoe where you can use it for daily training, long runs, push it into tempo and marathon pace, wider midsole, little bit of stiffness, slight rocker off the toe. Really, really love that shoe actually. It's turned into one of my favorite trainers this year. The Cyclone 3 is much more nimble, much more agile, much snappier, does require a bit more work from the calves to transition through. I think these shoes do exist quite nicely alongside each other in a rotation, which is probably the point from Topo. So I think they've done a good job of pairing, you know, that kind of high cushion super trainer with a speedier, snappier alternative. You could pretty much get away with that as a 2-shoe rotation. The main difference I would say is the level of protection and the kind of extra work that you have to do with the flexibility and snappiness of this midsole. The Hoka Mark 6 is another shoe which springs to mind, coming in at the same price point, supercritical EVA midsole. I think outperforms its specs, honestly. Usually I'm not too keen on EVA foams these days, but I think the foam has a good level of squish, combines nicely with the rocker, which is going to be the main difference to the Cyclone 3. The Hoka Mark 6 is more rockered, it's more kind of snappy in terms of tipping you forward, whereas this is snappy in terms of the kind of punch back that you get from the foam. This is relying much more on the performance of the foam. The Mark 6 to me is relying more on the kind of geometry to pick you up in your stride. I think the other difference as well is going to be the fit. The Mark 6 is notoriously narrow, especially through the end of the midfoot, which is literally the opposite of the Cyclone 3. So if you're chasing a snappier, lightweight speed trainer, but you can't get along with the fit of other speed trainers out there, the Cyclone 3 is the solution to that. The Mark 6 is, yeah, not going to be for everyone in terms of that upper. The Rebel V4 gets a mention in terms of the fit. If you're looking for a lightweight, flexible shoe with a wider fit, the Rebel should also have you covered. Although the difference is that the Rebel is wide throughout, just on merit of it having a wide midsole base, whereas the Cyclone 3 is specifically wide through the forefoot area. So if you have an overall wide foot, which continues all the way back to your heel, then the Rebel V4 is going to be a better fit in terms of fit, but the Cyclone 3 is definitely suited more to people with that wide forefoot only, if that makes sense. In terms of the midsole, I did not like the Rebel V4 at all. I found it to be a soft, mushy mess. Bottomed it out on my first couple of runs, got blistering from the heel counter. Cyclone 3 beats it all day for me, but worth a mention in terms of fit. Some people can't be too fussy in terms of the midsole feel. So yeah, if you're a wide footer looking for a lightweight shoe, think of those two in the comparison between the Cyclone 3 and the Rebel. One more that I could also mention would be the Puma Proprio, which is even lower stacked than the Cyclone 3, coming in at only 20 mil of foam in the heel, which is crazy. It's the only track legal road racing shoe out there right now, I believe, or at least the only one with a super foam. So Nitro P-bar, I think, underfoot. I'm not sure whether it's aliphatic. Either way, not many people will know about it. It's slightly lower stacked than the Cyclone 3. It's snappier. It's definitely a little bit more harsh, but it's definitely a bit more racy with a more dialed in fit through the toe box. I think the Proprio is probably a little bit faster. I think it sheds 30 grams, but definitely not as comfortable, not as versatile. If you're chasing a grass rep shoe, I will be reviewing the Proprio at some point. I've got a whole lot of shoes to review coming up, but the Proprio is a really nice grass rep track session shoe which you can use, which is spikeless. I think the Cyclone 3 can do a lot of that with the added bonus of being able to handle some warm-ups and cooldowns, but maybe it won't be able to hit the same top speeds as the Proprio, which is, yeah, just a racing weapon. So yeah, overall, the Topo Athletic Cyclone 3 is a nice, nimble, flexible speed trainer, which has an accommodating fit, which I think puts it in a really nice niche position on the market, which I'm pretty happy to see. I really like what Topo are doing here, just giving us simple things which work nicely, full P-bar midsoles, nice comfortable uppers, light weights. You don't really need to do a lot more. The only thing that's really missing is people getting the word out. So hopefully this video has been helpful, giving you a bit of insight into the Cyclone 3. I'm excited to see what Topo have coming up next. If you're interested in the Spectre 2, I have a review on that as well, so check that out. Yeah, that's about it.